All right, well, let's see. We're about at 8:02, so we're actually going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, everybody joins us and doesn't miss too much here at the beginning. So I'm really happy to welcome you to the first edition of the Tableau Coders Initiative. Kyle and I have been really excited about releasing this. We've been working on it a while. We had the idea a while back, and over the last couple of months, we've been putting a lot of work into building a really good program to teach you how to code, to create a nice open environment for you to learn. And we're going to have some surprises, some fun, some things like that along the way. But let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Zach, guys. You might have seen me in other presentations, other talks, other things like that. I'm a leader of a Tableau Center of Excellence. I am a Tableau Data Dev Ambassador, a Columbus Tug Leader. I co-lead the DataViz Office Hours series. I also own the Data Theories website. I live in Springfield and I work in Columbus. So both are in Ohio, if you're not familiar with that. I live with my wife, Lisa, my son, Grayson. I have 2 cats, 2 dogs, and I have another baby on the way due at the beginning of May. So we're expanding a little bit. I thought this was funny because Kyle wrote his list of things first. And I kind of copied that over, and I realized that we kind of have the same 3 things that we like. So I stole it. I love the game. I love video games. I like true crime stuff. I think, Kyle, you put true crime TV shows. I like podcasts, but I do like TV shows as well. And working around the house projects like that. So Kyle, why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure thing. Thanks, Zach. Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Massey. This is kind of a new thing for me. I haven't really been too involved in tugs previously, but I really excited to get this out and get this initiative going and meet all you guys and collaborate on coding stuff here. So I am a member of the Tableau COE at JP Morgan Chase that Zach leads. So if you're putting 2 together, Zach is my boss. But for the purposes of this, Zach is not the boss of me. I am primarily a software engineer focusing on automation and user experience. So all of the automated activities for our Tableau servers kind of go through me and then the dev team in our COE. I am originally from Cincinnati, but I've lived in Columbus since 2004 when I moved up here to attend the Ohio State University. I majored in music education at first, and then switched to foreign language, and now I work in software development at a bank. So, life doesn't always go the way you think it will. I live with my partner, Dan. We've been together for about 12 and a half years. We have 2 pets, a dog, Kevin, who had a surgery yesterday, and he's a little grumpy, and a cat, Willie, who made an appearance. If you were on right at the beginning, he was in here screaming at me. Like Zach said, I also love video games, true crime, and house projects. We're about to redo all the flooring in our house, and I'm going to redo the bathroom. So I've got a lot coming up in the next few weeks. That's me.
Nice. And I do see a couple OHIOs in there.
Nice.
Definitely, we're both Ohio State fans. I will also say I'm actually closer to Cincinnati than Columbus, where I live. So my family is lifelong Bengals fans. So if I just kind of start yelling in the middle of the presentation, that is why. It still hasn't kind of sunk in that we didn't win. Awesome. So welcome to the initiative. I'm going to introduce you a little bit to what we're going to be doing here. The initiative really is built for you to learn code. Yes, we're going to be using Tableau. Yes, we're going to be using the APIs, but the goal here is to teach you the basics of code, work you through intermediate things, get into the advanced territory. You'll learn a lot of programming philosophies and different tool sets that you should use today. But the goal here is just to really teach you code. Tableau is just a vessel to do so. I'll also say that Kyle and I will be learning alongside you with some things. For example, I personally have learned how hard it is to consistently spell initiative right. Just before this session, we realized that this was spelled incorrectly. So, you might see some misspellings, and probably especially with the word initiative. We actually put a goal out there, kind of a mission statement. And our goal here with this program is to teach others to code with the Tableau APIs and developer tools while fostering a safe, friendly environment for users of all skill levels. I do want to emphasize, I mentioned this in several places. If you don't know a thing about coding, if you don't know where to start, if you don't know anything about that, it's okay. We are not expecting you to know anything. We're going to teach you from the ground up. If you do know things, some of these intro sessions may be a little bit below your skill level, but hopefully you'll still learn some things. We'll expand on what you do know already. All right, so let's move forward. The roadmap. So right now and over the course of the next few sessions, we're going to be focusing specifically on the REST API. The REST API, and we'll get into this, is used for programmatically updating, creating, deleting things on your Tableau server environment. At the same time, we're going to be working with Python. We're going to be teaching you how to use Python, as that's pretty much the best language that you can use, especially as somebody that's starting out when you're using something like the REST API. Over the course of time, after we've got a few sessions with the REST API, we've got through all of those things, we'll move on to other different APIs. So second up, we'll be going into the metadata API, which is all about getting data, gathering the information from the server and using that in other process flows. We'll go into the Hyper API, which is about actually programmatically creating data sources and hyper files. We'll move on to a completely different area, which is the JavaScript API, which is all about embedding Tableau and using kind of two-way communication with your application in Tableau. And then finally go into the Extensions API, which is all about expanding the art of the possible within inside of Tableau. Throughout the series, we'll also have micro topics. So although these are the 5 main elements of where we're going, we'll have smaller things that don't require multiple sessions, like the document API, where you can pull information from the XML of a workbook and things like that. This is subject to change. It's going to go based on how the curriculum goes, how fast we move through it. But the whole goal here is we're not going to do things quick. This is all about taking the time to go through the foundations, all those things, and move forward through the curriculum. All right, so let's start off the session with data dev. I do want to mention up front that there are 5 things that you will be doing in this session. Now, I'll mention that you don't have to be interactive, but you're going to get the most out of this course if you do the things that we ask you to do when you do them. The first of which is going to be accessing and creating your data dev account with Tableau. Well, Kyle will be showing you how to install 3 software. So 3 different software applications, and then also getting a personal access token. Those are the 5 things that we're going to be doing today. So moving through, we're going to start here with tableau.com/developer. So I'm going to switch over to my browser. You're going to see some stuff about music. We were trying to figure that out before the session, and we failed miserably. So let's go ahead and we're going to go everybody now to tableau.com/developer. This is everything about the Tableau developer program. The Tableau developer program is for people like yourselves that are interested in learning code. It's also for others that already know code. It's all about finding the different APIs, information, learning resources, things like that. Specifically, what we want you to do right now is actually join the program. This is critical because one of the things that you get by joining the program is a sandbox Tableau online site that you can use to test and play around with the APIs. So go ahead, tableau.com/developer, hit join us. It's going to ask you to register. So go ahead. If you haven't done this before, register. I'm going to make my name a little bit different than I normally would, just so it doesn't catch me on anything. I am also using a temporary email. So, as I've already used all of my emails on this. So we'll go ahead and, say org, go ahead and pick your department, all these things, how to enter some form stuff. Go ahead. And not gonna do my email because I don't want you guys calling me. And once you've filled all that out, go ahead and join the developer program. Now, it actually says that I account already exists, so I'm going to try this again. Go ahead and finish that out if you haven't already. Do tableau.com/developer. Join us. ZG this time. We're going to try that same email that I just had over here. or IT. I'm a director this time. Last time I got promoted really quickly.
Promoting yourself.
Yes, that's how it goes. Join developer program. Come on, Tableau. All right, so this time it worked. So this time, it's going through and it's going to send you the typical verification email. So I'm going to go back over to my email over here and you'll see this is a temporary email application, temp mail. I obviously recommend that you use your own email, but once you get that, you're going to get this activation email. Go ahead and hit the activation link inside of your email. And that's going to activate. You're going to have to give yourself a password and then activate. So now you're all set up. You got that set. We're going to go back to tableau.com/developer. And we're just going to go ahead and sign in this time. Go ahead and use that email that I've got. All right. Now, if you're caught up and you've got logged in, you've got that set up, then you should see something like this. You get a slightly different look at the top, and you're going to have this link that says Developer Sandbox. Now, there's other things that come with this. You're going to be added to a mailing list about what's coming up with the APIs. You're going to be getting things like their demo sessions for their sprints of work, things like that. But for now, we want to go to New Developer Sandbox under Developer Sandbox. You'll see one big button here. It says Get Site. Go ahead and do that. And that's going to send you one last email. And this last email, if I go over here to my other, that's not it. Sorry, 1 second. One of these tabs I shouldn't have changed. There we go. So I go back here to my email list, and you're going to get the second link. So now I think it reset my email, but the second link just says, do you want to activate your site? Once you do that, it's actually going to give you a link that you can go to, and you'll have something that goes into something like online.tableau.com, give you a direct link after that. And then you go ahead and sign in with that email that you used and the password that you used. That will give you access to that specific sandbox area. Now, this is important because we use this for a lot of other things. So I'm going to check there's a couple questions here. If you have a Tableau public account, can you use it? I believe so, but I think you do still need to register specifically for the data dev side. And then mine doesn't have it just has join us. Make sure you're logged in. If you didn't actually log in after that, it might say that join us page. But that's about it for getting this. We're going to come back to this sandbox site here in a little bit. Could you go back and show the sandbox area? We need to join the developer program. Yes, I'll go through this real quickly again. So this is tableau.com/developer. You might have the big orange button at the top that says join us. You'll use that join us link to actually create an account. It would register down below. You'll get an email that actually sets up and says, this is your email, please, activate it. You click activate. And then when you come back to the site and you're logged in, you might have to log in. You'll have this button here that says developer, new developer sandbox. You go ahead and click that. You hit get site. That creates another email to you that just says, are you sure you want to create a site? And once you click through to that, you'll actually have the site that you can log in with those credentials that you had before. Now, if you don't get this done during the session, it's not, the end of the world. These recordings will be these sessions will be recorded. You can come back and go through these sessions and go catch back up. You're not going to miss a lot in this session. The second session is really where we're going to take advantage of that site for the most part. This one's really just an introduction. So it's okay if you don't get to this point and you want to come back afterwards. That's all right. So let me go ahead and flip back over here. Now, I forgot to mention, just in case you ever hear me say this or hear Kyle say this is the Data Dev Program's mascot. His name is Flex the T-Rex. So, just some good information there about who this is. All right, go ahead, and we're going to now flip over to Kyle, and Kyle's going to spend some time showing you how you should configure your system. So this is all about what you should actually download, and I'll emphasize it. Kyle's going to show this, and when he shows us, we want to go through the steps alongside him.
All right, thanks, Zach. Can everybody see my screen now that I flipped over? It looks like it. Okay.
Yep, all good.
Thanks, Zach. Okay, so configuring your system. As Zach mentioned, we need a language. If we're going to do coding, we need to do that in a coding language. So a language in its broadest sense is just a set of commands and instructions, and they have a certain kind of syntax, and you're basically telling a computer what to do via a language. I think that's pretty straightforward. As Zach mentioned, we recommend Python. And the reason why we recommend Python to start with, especially for an audience like this, where we're saying no coding experience required, is Python's really easy to read. And when it comes to programming languages, even if you know very little, you can sit down and kind of figure out, okay, this is an if, this is an else, this is logically what I'm trying to do here, versus something like Java, which is, you can get the hang of it, but it has a lot of keywords that may not mean anything to a new person, and the syntax is kind of funky. There's a lot of symbols you need to remember. So we're going to go ahead and start with Python, and then obviously as you learn and grow more, if you want to expand, that's always a great idea too. And I am going to show you how to set these tools up, but for now, I'm going to move on to the next slide here. We also need an IDE. And if you haven't heard the term IDE before, it stands for Integrated Development Environment. And it's essentially an application that you use to code. Depending on the IDE that you're using, you may get benefits such as code suggestions and autocompletes. So if you start typing something, it'll logically find out, oh, these are the methods that belong to this. Let me make some suggestions for you. Linting, which is essentially code cleanup, making sure that spacing and things like that are consistent so that it's easier to read. Most IDEs will come with a terminal that you can use so that you can run little bits of code without having to actually publish it to a web server or whatever you're doing. And what I put here for the second one is you're going to spend a lot of time in your IDE. So it's right. It makes sense to find the one that's right for you. And some IDEs will be for specific languages or geared towards specific languages. Some will have extensive community support, and some are a little bit more niche. So you might be a little bit more on your own. But another big one to look out for is extensions. A lot of IDEs will have like an extensions marketplace to make them work with more languages, to be visually more impactful, some accessibility things. So it's just important to kind of research what's important to you. But all that being said, we, for this course, are going to focus on Microsoft Visual Studio Code. It's pretty language agnostic. It has a huge extensions library. It has huge community support. This is what I use primarily for work and at home on my personal stuff. So we'll dig into that one as well. And then last but not least, the third tool that we'll install today is a tool called Postman. Now, Postman is a tool that lets you make client requests or requests to a REST API or another server locally without having to code them out first. So a lot of times you will use Postman to test things out. Like if we're building an API, I want to make sure that the endpoint gives me the response that I want before I push the code into another environment. I can use Postman. And so we'll cover all of those here in a second. So what I'm going to do now to actually give you guys more of a real world experience is I am going to share a virtual machine here. Get it pulled up. So I'm going to share again on screen 3. All right, let me start this up. So I'm running a copy of Windows 10 in a virtual Oracle VirtualBox. And the only reason why I'm doing that is so I can show you guys clean installs, and so it doesn't affect anything that's already on my system. But essentially everything that I'm doing now would work the same on any version of Windows. Sorry, it's starting. It won't let me drag it over here. And I also went and checked out, and all 3 of these programs offer Mac UI installers and Linux UI installers. So the install process will be essentially the same for all of these. but I'm going to be demoing on Windows today. So here we go. I've got my fresh, clean Windows environment here, and I'm just going to go ahead and go to the first place I'm going to visit is python.org/downloads. And it's going to recognize right away that I have Windows. For this course, we're just going to go with the latest available version of Python. There may be some scenarios, if you have a work environment that's got some older technology, you might need to select an older one. But for these purposes, we'll just go with 3.10.2. So I can see that downloaded really quick. And if I go to install it, there is something that I want to call out here in this installer. So this is specific to Windows. So if you're using Windows, when you go to install here, we want to make sure that this option here, add Python 3.10 to path, is selected. And what that means is that it will allow us to call Python from anywhere. We don't need to navigate to where it installs in order to call it. So after I make that selection, the rest of these, the rest of the default features are just fine for what we're going to be doing. So I'll give it permission here.
And just to emphasize, this is one of those times when you should be following along. So you should be going to python.org/downloads and hitting download Python, adding to the path like Kyle said. So just to make sure if you didn't catch that, make sure that you're following that.
Exactly. So we'll give this just a second here. It is a virtual machine, so it's not quite as fast as my normal, but should be almost done here. And then we can check and make sure that it installed correctly. So while this finishes up, I'm going to go ahead and start the download for Visual Studio, just because it's a bit of a larger download. So this one here is code.visualstudio.com/download. We have a link in the presentation as well. So I'm going to let that get started, and Python's almost finished. So while that's chugging along, we'll also download Postman. And this one you can get from postman.com/downloads. We'll let that one get chugging along here. All right, so setup was successful. So how do I test that? How do I make sure that Python is available? So when I click on close here, in Windows, I can open the command prompt. On Mac, you can open a terminal window. On Linux, whatever terminal name is used with your distribution. But when I go in here and just type the word Python, I now see that I get something that says Python 3.10.2, and I get a very basic entry here. So I can just test out. Yes, that gives me 4. This is Python. So I know I have Python installed successfully here. So let's go ahead and move on to
real quick, Kyle. I just want to jump in. So there's a couple questions. It's hard for us to know exactly how your work systems are going to be. Some people do have restrictions. We're kind of going under the assumption that you're using your personal laptop. Inside of it, you see the Johns, like we're mentioning other companies like Chase. Certain companies are going to have requirements of how you install software. So, this is really just going into the assumption that you can install whatever you want to, and you're kind of using your own laptop.
Yeah, good clarification, good call out. And one thing that I also wanted to say about Python is you'll see if you do some Googling that there's still Python 2 still has a very big presence out in the world. And Mac OS actually comes pre-installed with Python 2. For the purposes of this, though, we really want everybody to be on Python 3. There are some minor syntax differences between the two. So if you're following along with what we do in Python 3 in later sessions and you're on Python 2, it's not going to look the same. And also Python 2 is just old. At this point, everybody should really be on 3.0. So even if you already had a version of Python 2 installed, go ahead and follow these instructions and get updated to Python 3.
And I'm going to jump in, sorry, just one more time. A couple people have asked, the recordings are going to be, this is just like any other tug. So the recordings are going to be sent out to you. If you registered, you'll get a link that says that they're out there. They're also going to be on Tableau's YouTube account. And then there's a question, can you use the Anaconda platform? And yeah, that's fine. That just comes with a lot more than what Kyle's talking about.
Yes, exactly. Any flavor of Python will do. I'm just going for the minimum for the demo here. So if you have something else, feel free to use it. All right, I'm going to keep moving along here just to make sure we don't run short on time. So VS Code installs just like anything else. There's not really anything to really watch out for here unless you want to select some of these options. So I'm just going to move along here. We won't go too much into VS Code today, but I want to get it downloaded on everybody's system so that you can take a look at it, and we'll dive into using it a lot more starting with the next session. But after it installs here, I'll just give you a real quick peek into what it is and what it can do. All right, so we're finished here, and I will launch VS Code. So here I am. So this launched into a folder that I already have. This is a settings file. It's a customization that I've done. We won't worry about that for today. But one of the big advantages, like I mentioned, of VS Code is this extension marketplace. So once I go in here, right away, I can go into extensions and see all of these things that are really relevant to what I want. So there's Pylance, which is a linter / code formatter, Python, the official Microsoft extension for VS Code icons. So just, you can see all kinds of customization options in here. And this really is, for me, I can say truthfully, VS Code has made me a better coder. I was using IntelliJ before. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I just think VS Code's a little more modern, a little sleeker, and definitely has better extensions, in my opinion. But that's all for VS Code for today. Let's move on to Postman. Postman is another one that this one is going to install really fast. When you go to Postman, you may also see the option to use Postman on the web. I don't have any experience with that. If you have any restrictions on like what you can or can't download and you want to get your hands dirty without a download, feel free to try that option. But I just don't have much experience with that. So Postman is going to come up here and we will talk about just a real quick setup, real quick demo of what you'll see with Postman here. So Postman comes up, and you'll see right away, it's going to yell at me, maybe. It's going to ask me to create an account or log in. Here we go. So working locally in Scratchpad, switch to a workplace. So you can, one thing that Postman does is you can create an account and then it will sync across all your computers. So if you're working on REST API calls in one place and you need to switch, it will sync over for you here. But primarily what we're going to use Postman for here is just making requests. So I can create a collection, which is essentially a folder of requests. But for today, and we'll get back to this in the demo in just a second, I actually have a collection that we will dig into in a moment. That pretty much concludes the setup portion. So I'm gonna hand it back over to Zach to talk about some API basics for just a minute, and then we will do some actual demoing.
Yeah, why don't you keep sharing, Kyle? You can just share the screen
Sure.
Since you're already there. Let's talk a little bit about APIs. So we've mentioned this a couple times. The APIs are something that's going to be very common terminology that we're going to use as we move through the curriculum and over the next couple sessions in the series. So let's go ahead, next page. So an API, we've got kind of some technical terms here, is essentially a broker between two systems or applications, lays out exactly what the user needs, blah, 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 blah. This is fine. This is the way that I want you to think of an API. It is the communicator between two systems. So usually you're going to have something like a client or your own machine calling to a service, a server, a database. The API is what is actually translating that call into the language that that application needs. So let's take, for example, that I want to create a project in Tableau server, which we're going to get into. What I would do is I would tell the API via the REST API language that Tableau's dictated, hey, create a project. Tableau is then, or the API is then going to translate that back to the application and say, hey, this person wants to create a project. It's going to create the project, return a message saying that's been created, and then it's going to pass it back to me and say, hey, your project's been created. This is used all over the place. It's in pretty much every application, every website that you've ever seen. And another example that you may have seen is, when you have like a central login, like Google, where you use Google to log in other applications. It is calling to Google's API to say, hey, can this person log in with these credentials? Google is saying, yes, that person can log into your application with these credentials. There's a lot of different ways to think of it. Somebody saying chef restaurant, there's also, see things about like the coffee store. There's a lot of analogies to think of this, or even a waiter that, transfers your order between you and the chef. There's all sorts of different things like that to explain it. Just think of it very simple as you can. We're going to go into the next page, which is specifically about REST APIs. So REST API is what we're working with. We're working with Tableau's REST API. It is very well documented. If you want to, I didn't set you up for this very well. Let me, I'm going to take the screen back. Tableau is actually very well documented with all of their APIs. And it's very useful to go back to this tableau.com/developer. You'll notice inside of here that one of the main pages is the tools, APIs, SDKs. We'll explain some more about SDKs and other things like that. But inside of this, there is the REST API. So you can jump in here and you'll go right into this page. It talks about use cases. It talks about how to get started, how to learn it. Specifically, it has documentation. Documentation is very well organized, really well built out and thought through inside of this website. And you can go here to API all references, all methods, and that actually is going to show you all the things that you can do with the REST API. Now, not required, not something you need to do, but it's interesting if you just want to get a sense of what can you do. So project methods. You can create a project, you can delete a project, you can query projects, you can update a project. Every one of these is going to have like a list of things that you can do, all the different API calls you can make for each of those REST APIs. So just a quick kind of high level overview of APIs and the REST API. And now Kyle's actually going to show you how to use Postman to do something with the Tableau REST API.
Sounds good. All right, let me go ahead and share again. So one thing that I'm going to call out on this page just before we move on is bullet number 2. So with Tableau's REST API, you can use your user ID and password, or you can use a personal authentication token. For these demos, I'm going to be using a PAT, a personal authentication token, because I don't want to have to change my password after every one of these, and I don't want you guys to see it. So one thing that'll be, that'll be important for this is, how do I issue myself a PAT? So once your site is set up via the steps that we did at the beginning, if I go out to online.tableau.com and it will ask me to log in.
And while you're logging in, Kyle, there's a question I want to answer. So everything that we're showing today works for both Tableau Online and Tableau Server, as long as you have the access to do the thing. And the server is accepting. So online, these developer sandbox are set up specifically for this. You're all set. Everything that we've shown, Kyle created the sandbox just for the session. You can do those things. Tableau Server, the only thing that I'll caveat there is the APIs need to be turned on and available, and you need to have access to do those calls. So if you're doing this at work, for example, you can typically always sign in, but you might not be able to create a project, for example. It depends on your access level. But here in the sandbox, you can do all the calls within a site.
Thanks, Zach. All right, yeah, I realize I need to pull this up inside of my virtual machine here. So 1 second while I log in again. All right, so from the screen here, once I finishes logging me in, here we go. So up on the top right where it has my initials, and if I click on this to show the account menu, I have an option here called My Account Settings. And in here, if I scroll down, I have a section called personal access tokens. So I'm going to create this token right now. You guys will be able to see it, but I'm going to revoke it after the fact. But if you are creating these versus using user ID and password authentication, just make sure and keep them safe, because they are, once they're issued, they can be used until they're revoked by just about anybody who knows the name and the secret. So like I said, just make sure you keep these secret. Okay, so I'm going to copy this. I created a token named Kyle, and the secret, which Tableau issues to me, is just a random string. Now, as it's telling you here, the secret is only shown once. So if I close this without copying the secret, then I need to revoke that pat and issue another one. I can't get the secret again. But when I come over here to Postman, I've got a few examples here about the initial calls that I want to show you. So first and foremost, we need to sign in. So our first call when we're using the REST API this way is always going to be to sign in. And that's so that Tableau knows you're about to do something via the API, and I know about it, and I've given you permission, essentially. So if I go to REST API sign in, I can see, if I look here, in the body of the request. So HTTP requests can have several things. You can have parameters, authorization, which we'll get to in a second. We've got headers, a body, and then some of these other things that are specific to certain kinds of requests that we won't go into. But for now, I am making a request that is XML. So I'll select raw and XML. One thing to call out, and I'll show in a second, is that the Tableau REST API can accept and return either XML or JSON. But in that big example of calls that we sent a minute ago, most of those examples are in XML. So I personally prefer reading JSON, but typically when I interact with the REST API for Tableau, I stick to XML so that it matches one-to-one with the documentation. But obviously that's a personal call here. So the way that I sign on to Tableau server via the API and Postman is I've got this request body here that just starts with a TS request. I'm passing in credentials. I'm telling it it's a personal access token by the name of Kyle, and then I send it the secret. So when I hit send, something. Can you still hear me? Am I frozen?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I can't. This screen is frozen. Sorry, 1 second, guys. I don't know what's happening here. Something pop up in front of this. Yeah, I can't do anything on my left screen. Let me stop sharing for a second.
While Kyle is figuring out his technical challenges and woes, we might have said that there were some prizes, right? I think we did. So we've got some gift cards to the Tableau store, and I'm going to ask a couple questions. And the first person in the chat that answers this correctly, and this is looking at my screen, who's ever ordered first will get a $25 gift card to the Tableau store. We've got 4 gift cards to give away. So first question, where, city and state, do Kyle and I work? All right, we got one. Oh, stop. All right, the first person to say Columbus, Ohio is Andrew Madsen. So Andrew, go ahead and send me your email. Go ahead and just chat me directly and send me your email, and you get the first gift card. All right.
Zach, can you try stealing the screen share really quick? It seems to be Zoom that's giving me the issue.
Oh, blame Zoom. Blame Zoom.
I can't even kill it in the task manager. I don't know what's going on.
Grab this email real quick from Andy. All right. Let me go ahead and share screen. Let me hide the questions. Haha. Haha. You guys thought you were sneaky. Do yes and yes. All right. What do you want me to do now?
You finish up the questions.
All right. Let me stop sharing.
Yeah.
Question number 2. Again, first person to answer the full answer. What is the mascot's name for data dev? Ooh, hold on. That was fast. Nicholas barely got Jackie. Nicholas Diorio. If you want to ping me your name, gosh, I don't even feel like I had that question out there. Let me put your name, write your name on here. That was fast. All right.
All right, I got it. I got it going here. If you want me to switch back, or you want to finish those out?
We can go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
And Nick, I don't see your email. Go ahead and send me your email if you haven't sent that already.
Okay, sorry for the delay there, everybody. I don't know what happened, but we're back. Okay, so I'm telling it here that I'm going to log in with a Pat, give it the name, and then I give it the secret that I copied from Tableau server. And then this is my site name. When you get the email about your dev sandbox setup, it'll have your site name in it. So just make a note of that. It's also in the URL here, so you can grab it from there. And then you can see here, the URL that I'm signing into. This, again, anytime you make a REST API call, the URL that you need to use will be in that documentation. But this is the URL for signing in. So when I hit send here, I get a response that has a token in it. The token here being what I'm going to use. This has been issued to me by Tableau server for me to use to perform the tasks after this. So, and then it's also going to send me back the site ID, which I may need. This is the site LUID, if you're familiar with the Postgres database or any of those fields. I will need that for some commands that through the REST API. And then it also sends me my user LUID, which at this point we won't need, but sometimes you may need to grab that from call to call. So then, just like I said, just to kind of show, the same thing can be done in JSON. So this is the same request, just turned into a JSON request instead of XML. All I need to do in that case is add a header called accept application/JSON. If I include that in the request, then Tableau server says, okay, they want me to respond in JSON. So then I get a response that's the same thing. It has the same site ID, site name, user ID, token, etc. I just get it back in JSON instead of XML. So that's like I said, personal preference here. We got a little bit delayed here, but let's give it like an actual practical example here. So let's say I want to use the REST API and I want to get a list of all the workbooks on a given site. This is just one to start with. So this URL is constructed similarly. You can see up through API version, it's the same. And then I have sites, and then that site ID that was returned to me by the original call, and then workbooks. The most important thing here is if I do not include my token, so I'll turn this off. If I don't include a valid token, then Tableau server will say no authentication credentials were provided. If I gave it an old token, it would say it was expired, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why it's important to remember that we need to add this token in. And every call that requires a token will have a header called X Tableau off. That's just the name that Tableau chose to look for their REST API. So if I include this header and a valid token and hit send again, what I will get back in XML that's a little bit hard to read, but you can see here I'm getting back an item for every workbook on this site, and I'm getting information about the ID, which is the LUID, the name, the URL, default views, what project, all the kinds of things that you would expect to want to know about a workbook just by sending one call. So you can see I've got an entry for every workbook on the site. The other option, or the other request I'll go through real quick, is just the ability to do the same thing, but add in some filters. And we'll talk about this more again when we get into Python as well. The filtering convention is similar between the two, and it all is primarily based on what do I want to filter on, what operator do I want to use, and then my filter value. So in this case, everything up through here is exactly the same as the last request that I just did, but I'm saying I want to filter it. I want the name to equal regional manager performance. So if I put in this token, if I do this, then you can see, and this one's going to be in JSON, Then I get back only the result for the workbook that so it's very flexible how you can make these calls, and you can filter. When we go into Python, we'll talk about other ways to filter. But those are our first REST API calls. I encourage you guys to go out there and set this up and play around with your site, and practice with other calls as well. And we'll dive deeper into this in the next session, and then we'll start to translate how these same calls operate in code in Python to begin with. So that concludes the demo for now. We're actually pretty close on time, Zach. So I think we'll use the remainder of the time to do Q&A and the remaining prizes.
Yeah. So a couple last slides before we wrap up. Thanks, Kyle. So let me share my screen. So, all right. So what's next? There was a question about, is this going to continue? If you missed the beginning, yes, this is just part one of many sessions. That's why we kind of took our time. We did things very slow. We'll get more into the weeds with the next session, which is in 2 weeks. These will be every 2 weeks at the same time. So 2 weeks from today, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern, at least for us, whatever time zone it is for you. Now, I just created this slide right here. If you didn't completely follow along, you had some trouble, catching up with things, you maybe had some issues or whatever it may be. These are the 4 things that you'll need to move on and continue with us in the next session. Might be good to take a screenshot if you didn't get these done. This is what you'll need to just follow along. So you need to create that sandbox via tableau.com/developer. So get registered there and create that. You'll need to get Python installed, Visual Studio Code installed, and Postman installed. Those are the 4 prerequisites that you'll need to continue with the session. So make sure to take the time. If you are doing this at work, it might be more difficult. I would say probably try it personal, but you now have the time between now and 2 weeks from today to move forward. And what are we going to get into next session? That's March 2nd, same time, 8 o'clock Eastern for me, different times for you guys. You will want to register for the second session, just like this one. It is set up like a tub, just like other things. So you want to register. We'll send out probably tomorrow, if not today, we'll send out the invites for the second series session, just so you can get on there. But this is what's coming. We're going to spend some more time with Postman. So if you got a little lost in that last little bit, that's okay. We're going to spend more time talking about Postman, how you use it. We'll actually start with code. It's kind of funny, Coders Initiative. We didn't start with coding yet, and that was very intentional. We're going to start with that next session. We'll go over the Tableau Server Client Library, which is a library that sits on top of the REST API, makes things more simple. We'll make some calls with the REST API, more fun, more prizes, more surprises. Now, before we open it up for questions, I do have 2 more questions for prize giveaway. So let me flip over here. This one's tougher. First person to answer. And I will say, Andy, Nicholas, you guys have already won, so you can't do it again. What are the 2 common languages that the REST API returns? Kyle did mention this. Kyle, grab the first answer. There's a lot of good answers. A lot of people knew this one.
Yeah, the first answer, they came in really fast. I think the first correct answer was Dave Sharples.
Yep. Dave, you got
Dave's
it. Dave
on an XML.
All right, so Dave, put your email in the chat. All right.
Yeah, most people did get this right. I saw a lot of Python in here. So we talked about Python, but Python is a language used for writing code. We won't get those responses from Postman, but we'll dive into that more in the next sessions.
All right. All right, got it. Thank you, Dave, and happy that you won. You won this time. Final question, final card for today, final gift card. The question is, I changed this one, Kyle, because I thought the time was too easy.
Does that mean I can get the gift card?
You can't, no.
Oh.
You can pay me though. So what are the 4 things that you need to have for the next session? You got to put it all in one chat. Postman Python, close, gosh, VS Code Python Postman site. Nope, actually Postman Python VS beta. Yep, I think actually I would say the first winner would be Bartesh M. If you can put your email in there, everybody that won, I will send you the gift card code today. And we're going to go ahead and open up the last 8 minutes or so for questions. So Bartesh, if you haven't already put it in there, all right, I got it. All right, so I got your email. So if you do have a question, just because it's easier to track this way, please put them in the Q&A. If you do have to drop, you don't want to stay for the Q&A. Hope to see you in the next session and going on. Really appreciate your time. I hope that this has been valuable for you. Like I said, Kyle and I have put a lot into this. We've been really excited to have this started. So hopefully it's been useful. If you do have feedback, you got our emails, or also, any other channels, Twitter, LinkedIn. Let us know if you have any feedback. Let us know. Otherwise, thank you for attending. So Q&A. Would it be possible to register for the entire series, or would you need to register session by session? I'll look into this right now because of the kind of the format of this. It's kind of set to be, session by session. The recording of the video will be available usually within like 2 days. They'll come out and they'll be recording. They'll be sent to your emails. We're planning to put all the information, the recordings, the emails, the content, all that kind of stuff in one location. We'll send that out soon as well. You want to take a couple, Kyle?
Yeah, sure. So Sandeep, I saw your question about not following how the collections were made and accessed. I glossed over that really fast, so that's not your fault. We'll talk more about collections and how to create them and manage them and share them in a future session. How do I sign up for the next session? Amin, when we create the next session in the event hub, if you've already registered for this series, you'll get a notification that you can register for this one, for the next one. And I think Zach was saying we're going to look at if we can just have you guys auto registered for the events that we create, so you don't have to register for each one. If you're not an admin, can permissions be set at the project level to do this stuff? It's actually based, Zach, correct me if I'm wrong here, most of this stuff is based on your site role, not your project role. So yeah, as long as you have, go ahead. Sorry,
I was going to say it depends. So project leader, for example, gives you all the access you would need to do at the project level. There's other things that you get just by owning the content on the server. So for example, if you're not a site admin, you're not a project leader, and you want to refresh somebody else's content, you wouldn't be able to unless you owned the content. You could then do it. So it's kind of nuanced. Maybe it's something we can spend some time talking over the next session.
Chris O'Brien, where on the site portal do I grab the API link? If you look at the documentation for the REST API that we linked to, it shows you how to construct that link. But for our purposes, you'll get it by logging into your sandbox, and then it'll be the first part of that URL that you see. But if you look at the documentation, it explains a little bit more how it's constructed. And you can, depending on what version of server you're using, if you're using something like for work, it might be slightly different. So I would point you there rather than giving you a hard and fast answer. Garima, there are going to be 5 sessions in total, right? No, not 5 sessions necessarily. We're going to go through 5 parts, 5 phases, 5 initiatives, or whatever you want to think of it. So there will be 5 major kind of milestones that we explore, but more than 5 sessions. So yeah, we hope to see you for every single one. But if you can't make every single one, we'll take whatever we can get.
Yeah, I would just add, we honestly don't know yet how long this will be. We've kind of put a high level roadmap together, but we don't know exactly like how long this will be. Maybe some topics will interest you more than others. So I can take over for a few. Can we use the API to diagnose Tableau performance? No, you're not going to get much from that. The APIs are more for content themselves. What you can use is you can use the Postgres repository to get that information. There's information in the logs. There's the built-in monitoring views inside of the site admin console. console, things like that, but it's not going to help you with this. The code for the Postman that Kyle put together, we're planning to share all these things, the documents, the collections, the videos in one place. We just don't have that put together yet, but I would expect that to be put together before the next session.
Yeah, once we go, I was just to add, I had planned, but once we get into sessions where we're a little bit more code heavy, I'll make sure that all the code's available in my GitHub before we go in so that people can refer to it after.
Yeah, so I'm not sure about the next one. Are there APIs for Workday yet? I'm not sure what that is. But if there's, if you have a question that we can answer after the session, feel free to reach out to us. Answer that. Something got stuck on tables from query. So that actually falls into the metadata API. So we will, once we get to that part, after that we spend some time with the REST API, we'll certainly share how to do that. There are some blogs about that as well. If you do a quick search, there's some good blogs about the metadata API.
Is 3.14 the right API version for developer site that is on 2022.1.0? So if you set up your site via the developer program like we demoed here, then you can use the same version that I was using, which is the latest version. Again, in that documentation for the REST API, there is a table you can get to that'll show you by your server version which API version you should use. So if you look in that documentation, it should have the right version for everybody.
Claire, yeah, we'll spend some time to, we really wanted to focus on getting some of the content for the early session set up, and focus less on like getting the whole agenda, future dates put together. But we'll spend some time before the next session and kind of get that out there, and likely put that out on the site that we had mentioned where we're going to store all of this. So we'll have something soon when it comes to the whole length of the curriculum.
I think I pretty much answered Sandeep's question. We'll go more into that in a future session. Yeah. And Dawn.
I can answer that. So as of today, this is a Tableau specific program. I could say that there's opportunities to eventually someday branch out into other tools. Kyle and I are both heavy to Alteryx users, as is Dawn. But for now, it's going to be pretty focused on Tableau. Simona, these sessions will be available on YouTube somewhere around like 2 days after they are been out, after they're recorded. So they are put on YouTube, and then they're completely available for anybody. Webhooks, that might be one of those kind of micro sessions. So between things, we might spend like 1 session or 2 sessions on webhooks and show you kind of end to end how to work with that. And we are right at the top of the hour. So thanks everybody that stuck around. Again, let us know if you have feedback. We really appreciate you guys joining us. We're excited to work with you going forward. There will be more and more things coming out of the Coders Initiative. Definitely follow that hashtag, so Tableau Coders. We'll be plugging any materials in LinkedIn and Twitter both for these things. And otherwise, see you next time. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great one.